Hi, I'm Benjamin Payne. At the K-12 Education Office at Hillsdale College, we support school founding groups and their efforts to start classical schools across the country. Finding the right leader is one of the first and most important steps to building a successful school. While we do consider experience in education, we seek candidates who exhibit unwavering personal integrity, honesty, courage, and servant-hearted leadership. Perhaps that's you. If you're looking to engage in fulfilling, impactful, and challenging work protecting our nation's future and building up the next generation of virtuous citizens, we'd love to hear from you. I'm looking for strong school leaders right now. Learn more about how you can make a difference at hillsdale.edu/leader. hillsdale.edu/LEADER. That's hillsdale.edu/leader.
Welcome to the Hillsdale College K-12 Classical Education Podcast, bringing you insight into classical education and its unique emphasis on human virtue and moral character, responsible citizenship, content-rich curricula, and teacher-led classrooms. Now your host, Scot Bertram.
Thanks for listening. The Hillsdale College K-12 Classical Education Podcast is part of the Hillsdale College Podcast Network. More episodes at podcast.hillsdale.edu or wherever you get your audio. You also can find more information on topics and ideas discussed on this show at our website, k12.hillsdale.edu. We're joined by Dr. Kathleen O'Toole, Assistant Provost for K-12 Education at Hillsdale College. Dr. O'Toole, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
We are about to begin a special series here on the podcast that will share lectures from the Hoogland Center for Teacher Excellence. And we've posted a few previously, so people might have heard a few of them, but there'll be more coming in the near future. What is the Hoogland Center for Teacher Excellence, and how does it fit into what we do here at Hillsdale College?
Well, Hillsdale's had, for a long time, a focus on helping K-12 schools and K-12 teachers particularly within those schools. And the Hoogland Center is a sign of that. It was founded back in 2000 to bring some of the teaching that we do here at Hillsdale College to public and private school teachers across the country. The Hoogland Center preceded the Barney Charter School Initiative. It was founded when Hillsdale Academy was still pretty young, and it's been going full steam since 2000 for nearly 25 years now. We are expanding its reach, partly because of a need we see, but also because of the success that the program's had so far.
So how does the Hoogland Center help create a natural extension of what Hillsdale's K-12 office is all about and carrying out the mission of the K-12 office?
Well, it brings the teaching that we do in the K-12 office, in K-12 education largely at Hillsdale, out to the outside world, to teachers from every type of school, of every subject and every grade. If you look back at the initial outline of the Hoogland Center for Teacher Excellence, which was put together in 2001, which is actually quite a long time ago now, you can see that it has 5 purposes. And those 5 purposes are still the focus of the Hoogland Center today. Number 1, to restore the focus of teacher education on content and meaning, not methodology. In other words, to give teachers an education in history, civics, literature, science, art, all of the subjects that they need to have a rich and well-rounded understanding of in order to teach students effectively. And the thought present at the very beginning of the Hoogland Center is instruction in content is more effective for teachers than instruction in method. Mm-hmm. No matter how many tools that you have at your disposal for teaching ancient Greece, you won't be able to teach ancient Greece unless you know the history of ancient Greece.
Right.
And so we thought as a college, we know about ancient Greece, among other things. Let's bring that to teachers, which will be fun for them and ultimately helpful to their students. The second purpose is to stress the need for a core curriculum that integrates all subjects kindergarten through grade 12. This is something that we see in the college's efforts, classical education efforts writ large, an emphasis on giving students a well-rounded education, not pigeonholing them into a particular course of study, a particular career path, before they're old enough to have received the foundation they're going to need, regardless of their career path, and before they're old enough to really know who they are and what they want to be doing when they're grown up. Third, to offer public school teachers an opportunity to learn from Hillsdale College. And this, I think, is really valuable. Today in America, if you are a public school teacher, you don't have very many opportunities to continue your education. There are many teacher trainings available, many professional development opportunities available. But again, these have to do mostly with methods for teaching and new policies. And this is how the district is going to be doing things from now on. You need to learn this new system. Not, let's spend some time going back to school and deepening our own understanding of the things that we teach. Fourth, to draw teachers from traditional public schools, charter schools, private and parochial schools, and homeschooling parents together. In other words, to create a kind of a fraternity, friendship, community of teachers from various school settings across the country together and help them think about the things that they have in common. And then finally, to establish a local, statewide, and ultimately national impact on teacher education. So that's what we do through the Hoogland Center.
I want to talk deeper about what these events look like in a minute, but to the first point, the focus on content and teaching teachers about content. Here at Hillsdale, I teach journalism, and so I talk to my students all the time about their storytelling techniques. And, you know, delivering a newscast is still just storytelling. That's what it is. I tell them, you can't make someone, you can't tell a story to someone else unless you understand that story yourself. You can't just be reading words on a page. You can't write about something you don't understand. And there is a little bit of a moment when they realize that, like, oh, I do have to know what I am talking about. I have to understand this concept before I can begin to tell someone else. If I don't understand it, I can't tell someone else about it.
Yeah. To be a great teacher, similar to being a great journalist, I think, takes two things. You have to know something really, really well, deeply, inside and out, and you have to be good at explaining that thing. The great explainers need something to explain.
Yes. So these Hoogland events are held across the country, some here in Michigan, where we are located, but elsewhere around the country as well. Who speaks at these events, and what can attendees and listeners expect to hear if they attend?
Well, these events aim to be inspiring and also practical. And so you'll see a mixture of speakers. There are professors from Hillsdale College who are teaching about the content, the meat of a subject. So whether it's children's literature or mathematics or the sciences, you'll see a faculty member of the college giving a lecture about some topic within that discipline that is relevant to K-12 schools. And then the rest of the agenda is people from the K-12 office, teachers from Hillsdale's affiliated schools, talking about what bringing this subject to life in the classroom looks like. And so it's a deep education in the subject combined with some strategies, some practical things that a teacher can do the following Monday to help make themselves an even more effective teacher than they were before.
You told us earlier that, again, one of the goals of the Hoogland Center for Teacher Excellence is reaching not just classical teachers or charter school teachers, but also public school teachers as well. What's the breakdown, perhaps, at one of these events? Who would you expect to see in terms of where the teachers come from?
Well, in this sense, the center's really fulfilling its mission. You see everyone there. It's public school teachers, it's homeschool educators, it's classical charter school people all together in one room. And it's a beautiful thing because I think there's an assumption about classical education that it's a kind of specific method for teaching, only for certain teachers, only for certain kids. And we think the same thing about public school sometimes. We think the same thing about homeschooling sometimes. But the truth is, great math instruction is great math instruction. And regardless of the setting, regardless of whether the kids are paying tuition or sitting around the dining room table or going to school for free, they need great math instruction. And so it's a place where everyone can learn, everyone can find something that will be helpful to them.
What kind of feedback have you heard from those who have been attending these Hoogland events? What do they take back with them and find useful inside their classrooms?
Well, people are excited about it. The energy in the room when you do one of these when you do one of these events is really exciting. It's fun. People fly across the country to attend these. We did a couple in Michigan last academic year, and we had Oregonians and Californians and some people from Vermont there in the room. They fly out, and I think that's a testament to how rare this kind of teacher training is and how important the community is to the people who have been attending regularly. They find it really useful. It's inspiring, it's energizing, it's fun to be with fellow teachers who are excited about their craft in the room. But on top of that, they learn things that make themselves more effective as teachers and make their lives as teachers more enjoyable, more efficient.
Talking with Dr. Kathleen O'Toole. She is Assistant Provost for K-12 Education at Hillsdale College, about the Hoogland Center for Teacher Excellence. You can find more at k12.hillsdale.edu and then click the Events tab. The Events tab will get you to the Hoogland Center events that are upcoming and some in the past as well. I would imagine, too, in addition to hearing new ideas or different ways, there's also the added benefit of having existing ways of teaching and existing tools being reinforced. It's always helpful to, that's why we do it that way. This is why this particular method works so well.
Yeah, I think we should be able to explain why we do everything that we do in K through 12 schools. We should explain it to ourselves, and then we should explain it to the students and their parents. And when you go about the discipline of figuring out what is the reason behind every little thing we do, the way that I teach my class, the way that I lesson plan, the way that we walk in the hallways, it's a good exercise to go through. It will cause you to improve on things that maybe don't need to be done that way, but just have been because that's always how we've done it. Mm-hmm. And it will, when you are doing something for a good reason, it will give you more energy and more excitement about doing it in the future.
The idea of teaching as an art, why the focus on that, and what does that even mean to approach teaching as an art?
Well, things can be arts or they can be sciences, roughly speaking. And if something is a science, then it's kind of fixed and known. And once you discover what it is or the way to do it, you just keep doing it that way over and over again because it's kind of written in nature that it should be done that way. Mm-hmm. And there are things that can be known for sure about good teaching. But the act of teaching is not like that. There's not a recipe that one can follow that will yield a great teacher. It's much more of a craft. It's like making something when you teach. And the variables really, really have a profound effect upon the way that you are going about it, if you're going about it effectively. You do things a little bit differently every year because you have a different set of students every year. And although what you're teaching is known and fixed, and the ends that you're pursuing, the aim, the purpose of what you're doing is fixed, the way that you get there is going to depend upon each individual kid in your class, the makeup of the class as a whole. Each class kind of takes on its own character. And it'll vary from subject to subject. The best teachers know that a career in teaching is a really delightful thing and a really kind of worthwhile thing to work on because you're honing a craft. You're getting a little bit better and better, and you're rethinking things year after year after year. And it's always changing, it's always developing, and there's always something to learn. And I think that's why we go into teaching, right? Because we love learning. And if we can restore to the life of the teacher an opportunity to continue learning well after your own formal education is done, then we can bring a lot of energy and joy back into the life of the teacher.
As you talk about a formula for a great teacher, we don't always know what yields a great teacher. Everyone's different. I think back to great teachers that I've had, and they don't all fit in the box. They were not all the same. They all had different strengths. They all approached things in perhaps different ways, but they understood the material. They understood a way to make it engaging for students, and I think their classroom felt like a natural place to learn. It was designed and set in a way that made it easy for students to access and master the material.
Yeah. I had a professor once who said that in teaching, you have to play the instrument that you are. So you can't, in your first year of teaching, go in there and do an impression of the best teacher you've ever had, because probably that person is different from you and it would come across as kind of false. You have to be yourself while you're doing it. And teaching is one of those professions in which you're really showing yourself. Not overtly, right? It's not an egotistical, like personality-based type of enterprise teaching. If you're doing it properly, the students should not be focusing on you as a person fundamentally, but they should be looking to you and then with you looking past your personality to something bigger and more eternal and fixed. And so the personal aspect of teaching is unavoidable. And that's why it's important as a teacher to live well. You know, the best teachers are really interesting people. They're fascinated with life. And, you know, at my old school, we had a pretty amazing cast of characters on the faculty. And it was, you know, there was a guy who he was a beekeeper who lived in a tiny house in his off time. And there was another guy who could play the piano beautifully, but you didn't discover it until you'd already known him for 3/4 of the semester. And, you know, people like that who are drinking up the fullness of life, you know, that's the kind of model that you want for your children if you're sending them to school. And that's the kind of people, the kind of person that makes a really happy and effective teacher.
We're going to be highlighting, again, featuring some of these lectures from the Hoogland Center for Teacher Excellence here on the Hillsdale College K-12 Classical Education Podcast. And we're proud to do that, to introduce them to our listeners. But as you've mentioned, there are these events throughout the year and throughout the country. What's the advantage of being there in person? If someone can make it, why should they come to one of these events?
Well, an in-person opportunity to learn is always going to be richer and deeper than a virtual one. That's just a fact of life. On top of that, you would find yourself in a room with other people who are honing the art of teaching, who are developing in that craft, and you'll make friends. You know, teaching can be kind of lonely some days. You know, you're in your classroom by yourself with your 20-something students, and that can feel like your entire world. But come to a Hoogland Center event, take a day off, and you'll see that there are hundreds of people doing just what you're doing, and you can meet each other and help each other out.
You can find more at k12.hillsdale.edu on the events tab. Look for the Hoogland Center for Teacher Excellence. And again, soon, here on the Hillsdale College K-12 Classical Education podcast feed, you'll hear some of these lectures. Dr. Kathleen O'Toole, Assistant Provost for K-12 Education at Hillsdale College. Thanks so much for joining us here on the Hillsdale College K-12 Classical Education podcast. I'm Scot Bertram. We invite you to like us on Facebook. Search for Hillsdale College K-12 Classical Education. You also can follow us on Instagram at Hillsdale_K12. That's Hillsdale_K12 on Instagram. Thank you for listening to the Hillsdale College K-12 Classical Education Podcast, part of the Hillsdale College Podcast Network. More at podcast.hillsdale.edu or wherever you get your audio.